Are we streaming
Be quiet, Greg.
simultaneously then?
We've started. How come nobody has framed me up? What kind of crew are we running right now? Suddenly I see my picture. Nothing is in frame. Can I please get some service just like any other host here? God. Zoom it in. Frame me up. This is in front of our entire audience. This is happening, Greg. Go ahead, show me, Jack. I want our audience to see what our crew is doing to me. That's pretty good. Zoom it in a little bit more because I like to slouch and it makes me look fat. Don't turn it up that bright.
We should show them the before the scenes with the makeup artists that do your like crazy Hollywood level makeup. Joey doesn't really look like Jesus from, New Jersey. He actually is a very clean shaven sort of a dude. But does this every day.
I'm satisfied.
There's a dedicated makeup staff.
All right. Okay. It's time to get started. Now I'm going to give myself a countdown. Are you ready, Greg?
I'm ready.
All right. 5, 4, 3. Hello, and welcome once again to Clash Course. My name is Joey Livingston, and my co-host with me today is Greg Brahe. How are you doing, Greg?
I'm wonderful. And yourself?
Not too bad. Can you guys give me a little more house volume on Greg, please, so that I can actually hear him? Greg, say for me, hello again.
Hello again.
Wonderful. This week on Clash Course, Greg has chosen a topic which I'm not sure that we are going to disagree on at all, but we're going to find out. My wager is that we will. What do you think, Greg?
We can always find something that we disagree on, even if it was like, chocolate is delicious. We'd be like, well, it depends. I think you and I will find something, but I'm not sure.
If for no other reason than spite.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So tell our audience what your topic is.
The topic that I want to discuss today is moving a little bit away from the religious end of philosophy. Since we were talking about what faith is, which sort of is related and not related, I wanted to talk about freedom in its own right, and say the position that I'm going to take is that the use of force is at times justified to accomplish an end.
All right. So the use of force is sometimes justified to accomplish an end. A very broad statement that we are going to try to bring into focus here in the next few minutes. And I would suggest that we begin by defining force.
Well, that's the thing, is the thing that inspired this, and I wanted to talk more about it and see if you and I could find a way to clash on this, and maybe somebody else will pick up the mantle and come on the show to really argue with me on this. It's because I have a very dear friend who is, he self-identifies as an anarcho-capitalist, an agorist, a voluntarist, and various other terms that are all sort of associated with the idea of absolute freedom from oppression, or from, not oppression, but from force is the way that he specifically describes it. And I think that is an absolutely absurd viewpoint, and that there are plenty of times when force is perfectly justified, and it's indeed actually necessary.
I think that my position is that of believing I'm against war. However, if somebody pressed me for my reasons, I think it would just come down to an ideal of, not wanting to hurt people. But, I realize that that's probably not realistic, in the sense that, like with your friend's philosophy of, this new thing he's working on called radical peace, right? That if at this point in our history, if anybody decided to engage in, this philosophy of absolutely no oppression anywhere, there's no way that you could get everybody to go along with that. So the people who decided, well, we're not going to fight no matter what, they would immediately get oppressed.
Right. I actually do agree with that, and I think the I guess the better framework in which to represent this is less about a I guess a direct statement. The use of force is sometimes justified, but the reason I want to go into this is because I think it boils down to a question of value. That there's certain things that can be valued higher or lower among different people. I think you and I agree very much in our value structure. So I don't know if we're going to clash that much on this, but we both identify as compassionists, as humanists. And that means that we put humanity first. But I think that the way to nuance this might be to ask some more pointed questions. Like you said, you're against war in principle. I would tend to agree, but I would say that there are plenty of times when war is not only an option, but it's the only moral option to do. And let me qualify this, because this is my friend is not against the use of force. He's against the initiation of force, which means that if I walk up and slap you, you or I have violated your rights. You slapping me back is defense, or you attempting to force me to stop that.
What if you
at
walk
whatever
up and
level
slap
it
my
was there.
friend?
That is exactly what I'm getting at here, is that a lot of people talk about how the United States should not be a police force for the world. And that may be an economic argument. It may be any number of arguments. Maybe just the fact that we're not accountable to the world. For us to be then policing the world seems an odd position for us to be in. But is it, based on the value of compassion here, how can anybody morally justify the idea of standing by and watching one person be harmed by another?
Right. Now, I'm not a expert by any stretch of the imagination when it comes to history, but of course the example that comes to mind here is the Holocaust and our role in the World War. But I think that there's something that I don't have clear in that scenario, and that is whether or not we knew that that millions of Jews were being executed when we went into the war. Did we know that?
I'm not sure. I'm sure that we knew there was something afoot that was sinister behind enemy lines, but I don't know.
Seems like we didn't understand at least nearly the full gravity of it until after the war was over. But again, I don't know for sure. That's just what I think I heard that at some point. But that is an example of, had we known, to not get involved would be absolutely, it would be out of the question. Of course, you would have to get involved if you had any moral fabric about you.
I agree. And yet there are plenty that abstained and took a neutral position or refused to fight, were uninvolved as a matter of principle or as a matter of self-preservation or prudence, however you want to call it, in saying that we don't want to suffer the losses. This is not our fight. We're not directly involved with it. And we're not really at risk by it, at least not today. There's that famous quote. It was first they came for the homosexuals, and I was not a homosexual. And then they came for the Jews, and I was not a Jew. And then they came for the academics, and I was not an academic. I don't remember the order, but essentially it says, and then they came for me, and there was no one left to fight, is the final point there, because it's absolutely right. If we only defend ourselves, then we will always lose to a superior force. It is only by banding together and acting out of compassion to defend others when we ourselves are not at risk, and taking a risk, putting ourselves into the position of risk when we were not initially there, that we can actually change things. Otherwise, it will eventually come around to us.
So this friend of yours, he doesn't think that that you should attack unless you are attacked directly?
Well, it's always hard to get a straight answer out of him on that, but that would be the um, explicit understanding of that philosophy. That yes, it would be an initiation or an escalation of force for you to enter into a situation that does not involve you.
I mean, that to me that I guess I would need to speak with your friend directly because it sounds so absurd. I mean, the implications of that is that murderers should not be arrested.
Right. That it would make sense to that. Now, of course, his philosophy has a large amount of. I don't want to straw man it here. There's a large amount of other literature. It's very strongly anti-government, is the way he sees it. He says it's not that there would not be control structures. It's just that they would initiate, or they would not initiate force. They would work entirely on a voluntary basis. Voluntary prisons that you could leave if you wanted to. But the way that basically it would work is entirely through economic sanctions that you
Voluntary prisons that you could leave if you wanted to.
Right.
That's called a house.
I'm dead serious. This exists in here, but it's economic sanctions in the idea that you sort of have your credit rating, and that is imposed upon you by a various whatever, and everything that you do depends upon your personal credit, and your credit would essentially be zero for.
This sounds like a horrible premise to a science fiction story.
Isn't it great? So it would be zero. You have zero credit, and therefore cannot engage in any trades with anybody who is concerned with your credit in any way. That unless you do these things like voluntarily go to this prison, in which case it will gain you credit back, and can put you. It essentially says you're ostracized or shunned entirely for not conforming, which I don't understand how that's not an initiation of force, for one. Or that is not forcing somebody
Stay
to do
focused,
something.
Greg.
But that's the
Stay focused. Sorry, that was
focus.
a joke that Sean told earlier. Your camera keeps going in and out of focus.
Oh, dang it! I thought I had that solved here.
Anyways, this sounds crazy, and I feel like we are arguing with stuff that you're making up.
Yeah, well, and you're right. I didn't want to make this about arguing against his philosophy here. It's just I've been thinking a lot with inspiring change coming up, and what I'd like to do with it. But there's always this dilemma that I very much view myself as a libertarian, in that I want liberty is one of my ultimate values. Personal liberty is a significant thing to me, but I also consider myself a socialist, and many people would see the two of those as a conflict of interest, that you can't be a socialist and a libertarian. But the initiation of force does not necessarily mean that one is a
Oppressor.
Right, is oppressing. It can in many ways be a liberator, or
well, to oppress one force could the same action that oppresses one force could liberate another.
Exactly,
So,
and there's always the risk of power vacuums and things of that nature, right? But
well, I mean, for example, if somebody was attacking another person, you would oppress the attacker. You would oppress their will to attack, and you would liberate the person who was being attacked.
right, exactly. You're oppressing somebody, most
So,
certainly.
so I would argue that oppression, in and of itself, isn't wrong without context.
That I think is a beautiful point. That wrong without context is just a wonderful concept to chew on in its own right. That
It's also a great show title, Wrong Without Context.
Yeah, that is a great show title. Because what can be considered wrong without context? Is it wrong to kill a person? Forcefully end a person's life?
Well, you know what? I think that whenever I'm confronted with these arguments recently, I immediately kick into a gear of suggesting that we use different words besides right or wrong. I used the word wrong to begin with just a moment ago, but technically speaking, what I mean when I say wrong is is harmful versus beneficial. So is it harmful to murder a person? Yes, it is harmful. Is it harmful without context to murder a person? I would argue that yes, it is. Is there any benefit without context to murdering a person? Probably not. But is there any benefit with context to murdering a person? Can there ever be benefit with context to murdering a person? I would suggest that yes, with context, there could be benefit.
Well, I think that we ended up begging the question there a little bit by switching to murder and by referring to it as harm. This is one of the reasons that I wanted to get into this is because I am fascinated by the moral psychologist Jonathan Haidt and his the website. He's part of a larger team, and there's plenty of other people involved, but he's the one that wrote the book The Righteous Mind and several others. And one of the things that he goes into in that is the 6 scales by which we measure values, or the value scales, I guess. I'm looking for that right now. I can give you all of them directly. But he says that harm and care, if it's stated in a positive manner, are values that people measure. But they are not the only measures that people bring up. That there's actually
several. Are you reading something or following
a
bug?
Here it is. Okay. So this is Moral Foundations.
Your screens are super high.
Well, I actually have 2 monitors now. I have one that's immediately behind the camera. That's I'm trying to work on so I can look at the screen and have it still look like I'm looking at the camera.
It just looks like you're looking to heaven.
I am.
Stay focused.
So anyway, Moral Foundations theory is basically the idea that there are 6 different scales on which we measure things, and the one that you mentioned, is it harmful, is only one of them. So there's care and harm. Of course, each of these is sort of stated as a positive value, care, or a negative value, harm, that we're measuring. So is it harmful or is it beneficial? Sort of the
right.
2 ways that you stated that. There's also liberty and oppression. That is viewed as a different scale in this, that, is it harmful to oppress somebody? Could be argued, but this is measured, as far as their theory goes, at least as 2 different scales. Fairness and cheating is another one.
Right.
Are you cheating to do this?
The thing I like about all these is that none of them are black and white. And I used to be much more of a black and white thinker than I am today. And ever since I let go of a lot of my black and white thinking, I feel like a much more grounded, level-headed person. Because if you start defining things in terms of right and wrong or good and evil, you can almost always be proved wrong. Within your own mind or by somebody else, because a person who does not think in black and white can show you the real, can analyze that situation in a much more realistic, detailed fashion. Whereas you say something is completely wrong, somebody can always show you a benefit that came out of that. So when we let go of right and wrong and start looking at scales of benefit or harm, then when we apply our judgment to decisions and weigh things in terms of benefit or harm, we can see, well, this action has a lot of harm, but it has a little benefit. Let me see if I can. Is there a different decision that I could make that could slide that scale to a different ratio to where maybe I can't avoid all harm, but maybe I can bring in much more benefit in this decision.
Right. And there's also, we covered 3 of them, and those are the 3 that I tend to measure realistically, because there are 6, and this is one of the things that is important for understanding how different people make different decisions. There's a great website, again, yourmorals.org. It's got the Moral Foundations questionnaire where you can sort of see, based on a lot of questions that are they're actually difficult to answer, sort of where you fall on it. And it was one of the most enlightening experiences of my life to take this. But there's also authority versus subversion, meaning, and not authority as in the intellectual authority of a scientist, but authority as in just the argumentum ad baculum. This guy is in charge. Are you respecting the authority? sort of the honor thy mother or the father, or the divine command theory
Right.
concept of morality. There's also sanctity or degradation, the things that we consider to be holy. It's very much related to disgust. I'm going to look. I think it's actually, I know it is still. So avoiding disgusting things, foods, actions. This is also referred to as purity. This is one that really is interesting because it's really easy to evoke that, and people cannot explain it. It's the greatest thing. Like for example, here's one of the questions in Jonathan Haidt's books that maybe this should have been our opener today. You and your family have a dog. It is a beloved family pet.
Kill it.
It is
Oh,
killed
go ahead and finish your
by
question.
accident. It gets hit by a car. You're also hungry, and it has good meat, so you decide to eat it. Was that wrong?
Is there other meat available?
Is that important?
Yes.
Why?
Because I would eat that meat if there was no other food available. I would eat it.
Well, you're saying what you would do. I'm telling you what you did do. You ate the dog. Was it wrong to do or not?
Oh, okay. Well, you haven't given me enough context to answer that question.
So I asked if the context is important. Was the
Yes.
well?
Context is
So
important.
if there is other meat available, does
This
it
is
make
fun.
it wrong for you to eat the dog?
Yes.
Why?
Well, it was harmful. My
Harmful
children
to
don't
what?
understand why we're eating why we're eating their brother or sister.
I guess you're taking this on a personal level because you have the other children, but I'm think that this makes the most sense. I did say it's a family dog, but it makes the most sense if it's a personal decision, just you and your dog. You say for hypothetical reasons here, you don't have a wife or children that could be upset about this.
It's just
Is it
me.
wrong?
It's just me.
Just you.
Do I
and your
love my
beloved
dog?
dog.
Do I love
Yes, yes.
beloved?
Oh,
yes.
very
Yeah.
much so.
Yes, it is harmful to my psyche.
Then why did you make that decision to eat the dog? That's what's fun about this is, of course, it puts people into the situation where you're saying, well, you ate the dog. Was that bad or good for you to do? There's another one that is. I have to give a disclaimer here. Children watching may not. This one might not be quite appropriate for children. I don't know how much of this show is. It doesn't use foul language, but it does have some descriptive imagery. So, Farmer Brown raises chickens.
Can you guys focus less on the titling and more on switching on to the right person while they're talking? My crew is just having a blast with the titling right now. They put dog food on the title a moment ago, and then they put man's best meal on the title. But they're not switching to the right people. They're just laughing at the titling. That's all they're doing.
Okay. So here's another one.
Right.
It goes again with this sanctity and degradation level, and this is one that it really is a powerful value to understand because it helps us understand a lot of where conservative Christian values play a role in how we can the sanctity of life is talked about quite a bit, or the sanctity of marriage. They're using that exact terminology, and it's something that they believe to be wrong, morally wrong, because they base their morals upon these values. So I have to say that this is a value that has, burning flags is another great one. But here's one. So Farmer Brown raises chickens. Farmer Brown is a bit of a fetishist. He lives alone. He sells these chickens, but not the ones in question here. What he does, though, is when he slaughters a chicken to eat for himself, after he slaughters it, he fornicates with its corpse, and then he eats it. Is that wrong?
Is what wrong?
His action to fornicate with the corpse of a chicken and then eat it.
I would say that it's very harmful
Harmful to
the chicken.
chicken's dead.
Well, that was the first bit of harm. The next
Right, but,
was just the amount of
is it very-
disrespect that he showed to the dead chicken corpse. What if
So
another
the respect? So you're saying that
what if another
the
chicken
corpse
what if
is
another chicken
sacred?
saw him doing that?
You don't know what that chicken's into.
And then thirdly, did he wash the chicken before he ate it?
He cooked it. That would kill any other, if it's killing bacteria, it's killing anything else.
This is gross.
that's that's the whole point of these is they're gross and they make people uncomfortable and they make people want to say, yeah, that's wrong. It's bad. But justifying why there is no way you can use any scale other than sanctity and degradation on that to say it is wrong. Everything, what is really harmful about that? You could make an argument that he's exposed himself to some infection. Great,
Well,
we do that every
let's
time we go to the
remove
bathroom.
let's paint a similar scenario, but remove the morality stigma that comes up with the idea of this guy humping a dead chicken. Okay, let's say that let's go back to the dog scenario. Your dog dies, and before you bury it, you dress it up like a leprechaun, and you do a puppet show with it for YouTube. Well, no, let's
Right.
take the YouTube part out of it. You just do a puppet show with it for your own amusements, and then you take it outside and you throw it against the wall to see how it bounces. You start playing a little one-man football toss with it. You stick sparklers in its ears. You light the sparklers. You shove a firecracker down its throat. Fire that firecracker off, and then you just toss it into the garden. Is that wrong?
Well, there's a couple things that could potentially be argued there if we're going to say that, like the firecracker and things may have caused some safety hazards for neighbors, or you may be contaminating the local
Well,
groundwater.
then it's no more wrong than firing off a firecracker.
Well, firing off a firecracker within a corpse could potentially scatter some pathogens and things. But otherwise, I mean, I really have a hard time after thinking about this. I have a hard time saying it's wrong. I think it's gross. It
Okay,
would make me not
so
be friends with that person. It's disturbing.
I have
It's
a,
not.
I admittedly have a hard time answering that question. I do want to say it's wrong. But you're right. It's not harming anybody else. The dog is already dead. I think it's a little disrespectful to the dog, but I would say that whether it's wrong or not, whether it's harmful or not, anybody who would go to those lengths, whether it be humping a chicken or playing party games with a dead dog carcass, that something has happened to that person in terms of harm to their mind that makes them capable of that, because it would be harmful to me to do that. If I
think that's quite a bit of projecting, though, don't you? To say that it would
well,
be
hang
harmful
on.
to you to do it.
Let me finish. It would be harmful to me. So I'm not projecting myself onto that person, but I'm saying that it would be harmful to me. It would be harmful to me to, for whatever reason, I would find myself in this scenario with a chicken. That would be harmful to me. It would be harmful to me to take my animal friend who had died and do that to his body. It would do something harmful to my mind. Now, somebody who would voluntarily do these things, I would argue that they had already been through something that had harmed them. And I would say ultimately they're not harming anybody, but their ability to do these things without feeling any remorse or anything is strange about these things would make me suspect that they might not be a benefit to society, that they might be harmful to other people. And at the very least, I wouldn't want to be their friend.
Right, I can't disagree with that. I would not want to be that person's friend either. That's a
Unless
I
you're the
think
chicken. What?
I think that's an entirely separate question, though. But you see, I brought these up because it brings up an interesting point when we're discussing morality. Is that I asked, is force is it ever okay to use force to achieve an end? So I think then obviously that that matters what the end is, right?
Sure.
If
But I think that I would argue that any time you use force, particularly strong force, particularly deadly force, that it is damaging to your mind, even though it may be justified.
that's probably true. I mean, we've seen a fair amount of that in or evident with PTSD. So
Yeah.
we have
It looks like you're constantly reading a cue card.
yeah.
like every line that comes out of your mouth, it looks like you just read
Yeah,
that.
I was trying to see if we have viewer comments on this one. I'm trying to find our. I didn't pull up the things beforehand, so let's see. There's the live link right now. Let me see if we've got the viewer, because I'd really like to see any comments that are going on with this. View all comments. Anything there? I see a couple on UStream from our good friend Esta Ann saying, calling you out, saying, "Why is this wrong without context? Why not right without context?"
I was talking about murder, wasn't I?
That was 13 minutes ago. I don't know where we were at that point. But then,
yeah, I was talking about
now
murder.
that
I
you
said that
humping a
murder,
dead chicken,
murder was.
I'm done watching this.
I argued that murder was harmful even without context.
Well, and that's where I did qualify by saying I think they were begging the question a bit by calling it murder. Murder, by definition, would be a harmful form or a wrongful ending of a life. But I mean, there's plenty of times where it's totally allowed to end a life, and most people aren't concerned with that in any regard. You know, if somebody is attacking you and attempting to end your life, everybody sees it as perfectly justified for you to end their life, or to even. I personally, this is one that the sanctity issue comes into play a lot, is when we talk about end of life. I have no problem with what was done by Dr. Jack Kevorkian and with anybody assisting another person in ending their own life, or
I'm not sure I
in
do
ending
either.
the life of another person on their request, as long as it is done and we can establish that these people are of sound mind at the time it's being requested.
Sure.
That's
I think that I'm in favor of allowing somebody to end their life who's in great pain and has a terminal disease.
So that being said, I think we need to. I wanted to come back around with these the chicken and dog questions here. There was a reason that I brought those up. It's a little sneaky.
Do we have to come back around on the chicken and dog?
It's because the question of force then can be applied to this. Now, we've established that these things are, gross and icky, and we wouldn't want to associate with those people. Say you consider that wrong. If you would use that terminology, say, no, that is wrong. People should not do that. Are you then justified in using force to defend that corpse?
What kind
to
of
stop that person from doing
what
it?
kind of force?
Maybe imprisoning them.
So one was having sex with a chicken. What was the other one doing?
A dead chicken. The other one was eating the family dog or putting on a puppet show with it.
I think that I would be. I think that I would be. I think that it might be wrong to, or I think that it might be unjustified to put them in prison, but I don't think that it would be. I think that it would be perfectly justified to keep an eye on them.
Maybe a mental institution. Would that be better instead of prison? Would that be a?
Yeah, maybe some.
Unless we could establish that they are.
I don't know about a mental institution. Maybe oppress them in such a way to where they have to seek some mental help. They can live in their house.
That it might be,
but some government monitored psychiatric care. Once a week you need to talk to somebody, buddy.
Well, I think that these actions indicate a maladaption to our society at the minimum. They mean that this person is likely to not adhere to other societal norms, and they have questionable ability to reason in other manners. But we can't say that they're not reasoning. I'm just saying that that would certainly bring into question whether or not they are capable of reasoning, because it is such an odd and known to be considered vile behavior that for them to do such a thing in a public manner means that they're at least not considering what the social ramifications of doing that might be. So that might be a justification for having their mental capacity tested. But if we were to test that and determine that they are of sound mind and they just really like doing this and they can justify it and saying chicken's dead or dog's dead and it's only mine and I'm doing this on my own property, then I really have a hard time in saying that we can use force to stop them from doing that.
Well, can we take the chicken away?
I think that might count as theft. It's their chicken.
So, could we play some sad music while they're trying to have sex with a chicken?
Sure. That might be that would be a different approach. And this is great. That was a beautiful thing that you just brought up there, actually, because this is a perfectly rational measure for stopping people from doing things that you don't want them to do without forcing them to do it. It's negative reinforcement, doing something that they don't want you to do, that they have no right to intervene.
We could show them a Playboy while they're trying to have sex with a chicken.
That may or may not.
It would ruin the moment.
Right. So I don't know what the answers to all these questions are, but I think that they are worth asking and worth digging into. And this is something that it's been on my mind a lot, and that's why I wanted to bounce these off of you. I knew that we didn't necessarily clash on things much today, but with inspiring change coming up, it's something that I really want to take into consideration a lot. When my goal with this, or our goal in the New Covenant group, right, is to change the world. This is not something that we do to just entertain ourselves.
All right, I want to take. I want to take a moment to read a few comments. So, sorry, I'm going to read all these that are being sent to me. So, Rictus Gate said, even when I was a kid, I avoided other kids who caused harm to animals or other people for fun or just for kicks. So, that's good. That's a good choice there, Rictus. An anonymous commenter said, what about a funeral operator? And I don't know what that commenter mean. I think
that they might mean doing like a funeral person, a mortician taking advantage of the corpses that are.
Yeah, I would argue. I mean, it seems like it's clear that it's wrong there. So
that seems to be a property right and a violation of trust issue. That corpse is not your property. You are tasked with a job.
So if it was your wife, is that okay?
That's another question, isn't it? That if she would consent when she was alive, and now she's dead, and as an atheist, that's just an empty body at this point. Is that wrong?
I think it is.
There's actually this is one that religion.
Hold on, I've got to read the last comment. Our friend Esta Ann says, "Humping a dead chicken? No, I'm so done watching this." Sorry, Esta. Sorry we spoiled your supper.
So here's what might be related to that. This is a story that came out last year. Sorry, I'm getting this from Rush Limbaugh's site, so it'll be sensationalized a little bit. But the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, before they were sort of tossed out last fall, passed a law allowing a husband to have sex with his wife's corpse up to 6 hours after her death. I don't know exactly why, but that what their justification was for it.
See, I feel like it's clear that having intercourse with a dead human being is off limits.
But why? That's another one of those why issues. This is, this is related even to organ donation. If we want to take the intercourse off the table, is it wrong if there's a dead body in front of you and you happen to have the information that this body is a genetic match to you? Say you're a twin, you have an identical twin, but you hate each other. Your twin is somebody that you cannot stand. You know that they would never donate the organ that you were in need of. For some reason, you have heart failure, so you were exposed to some chemicals or something, so obviously it can't be a genetic issue. So you have heart failure, you need a heart transplant. You know that an identical twin is a perfect match for you, and you can take it without even taking anti-rejection drugs. So your identical twin gets hit by a car. Is it wrong for you? I mean, this one it would take a team of doctors, but say theoretically you could do this on your own, for you to take that heart, knowing full well that they wouldn't want you to take it, and put it into yourself.
I'm not sure, but I want to back up for a moment and say we've got 5 minutes left in the show. I want to say that we have agreed that that the people who are doing these acts hypothetically, we have agreed to some extent or another that they have been harmed. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to take themselves through these actions.
No, I'm not sure we've necessarily agreed that. You've stated it, and I haven't challenged it. But
We've agreed that they have mental issues.
I agreed that it's a potential that they might have some. At the very minimum, I will say that they do have some social issues. They're not adapting to
those are mental issues.
That's sociologists and psychologists would probably disagree with you, but
it all has to do with the mind.
That's true.
So where I'm going with this is that if what we have agreed on in any of these categories is true, I would argue that although I can't put my finger on the specifics of why these things are wrong, that the argument would lead to that place.
But here's the thing about that, and this may have to be my final point here, is that we've ostensibly agreed to that these people are mentally ill in some manner. But the question then is, why have we agreed to that? Is it because we come from the society where these things are considered wrong? Let's take another example is smoking. Now, in the 1950s, was it wrong to buy a pack of cigarettes for your 12-year-old and say, hey, get going, this is, you're a man now, start smoking? It was harmful, sure, but I mean, it was at that point not considered wrong. It was not a moralized issue. Steven Pinker talks quite a bit about this moralization of things in his book, The Blank Slate, which is a fantastic book.
I don't think that smoking cigarettes is immoral.
That's you don't, but plenty of people actually do. That is something, or say vegetarians, vegans. These are things these are moralized issues for these people.
I think that there's more potential that it's immoral to eat dead animals than it is for smoking cigarettes to be wrong.
Well, let's take it away from cigarettes then and say marijuana. I think that
I don't think it's immoral. I don't think it's immoral to smoke marijuana.
Well, of course you wouldn't, Josiah. But I think we're at a watershed here, actually, in the United States, and even much of the world, where that is no longer considered morally wrong. But 20 years ago, it was. That we are seeing a major cultural shift, that the consumption of marijuana is not considered morally wrong. However, if we were to make that same question about a equally naturally occurring drug, something like magic mushrooms or psilocybin toxin, most people would say, well, that's wrong.
I don't think doing drugs is in and of itself immoral. Now, given context, the effect that it can have around the people that you are responsible for, it can, in context, become an immoral act. But in and of itself, I don't see it as immoral.
Well, here's what's interesting about that, though, Joey, is that a fair amount of our society may say that you are mentally ill for having that opinion, that there's something wrong. That's the point I'm getting at, is that we have these concepts of what is right and wrong, and these are all things that are based on sort of purity and authority and loyalty, the things that are less objectively defined, and they are all culturally dependent. Whereas care and harm, fairness and cheating, and liberty and oppression are objective. They are things that are independent and can be measured in any culture. So that is sort of where I'm going here, is that we made these judgments about the people that with the dogs and chickens and said that this is, they're probably mentally ill. But they're mentally ill because they don't agree with what society is telling them to do. And so what society tells people to do changes. So is it fair? Is it not begging the question to say that they are mentally ill because they disagree with us.
I think so. We're out of time, though. Can you stop bringing up weird sexual issues on our show? You're literally running people off. I want to read a couple more comments. Trollololan wrote in, he commented in Popsicle, I think. And then he wrote Bunny O T-shirt, period, O, comma, bomb.
Where are you getting these?
Where is this on? Is this on YouTube? Yeah, this is on YouTube.
Because I tried to look.
And then Alex.
Oh, there they are. Okay.
He probably didn't want me to show this in public, but I'm going to anyway. Alex Greco sent me a picture of a dead sexy chicken. I wish I could. I'm gonna bring. Can you focus in on this? I'm not going to accuse him of trying to prove that chickens can be sexy, although he did follow it with a comment, but they're so hot. So that's the sexy chicken. And,
maybe we should have switched it to turkey just for,
yeah, for
appropriate
festive
discussion.
purposes.
Right.
Yeah, all right. We're done with this topic. We're probably going to bury this show and not archive it. All right. Sorry, Esta. Say you're sorry to Esta, Greg. You're the one that started it.
I'm sorry, Esta, for making you leave by invoking your disgust and sanctity, degradation, intuition here.
You should be sorry, you chicken humper talker about her. All right. That's the end of Clash Course. Greg is coming up in a moment. Are you doing another Clash Course, Greg?
No, I thought Mouty had this time slot this week. But he'd asked for it last week, and I told him he could have it this week.
Oh.
Do we not have something planned for the next hour? I was under the impression Mouty had it.
We're going to find out. We're going to find out. Stay tuned. Your guess is as good as ours.
All right.